Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. This is a very happy day for me today because I get to hang out with my good friend again, Glenn Twiddle. And look, I did a chat with Glenn a few weeks ago. If you want to know his backstory about how he brought Arnold Schwarzenegger out here and Richard Branson and Gary Vee, and he's sort of done all these things, you go watch that episode because we're not going over it again. But to give you like the elevator pitch on who I'm talking to here, Glenn's known as the number one out of the box renegade marketer in Australian real estate. He's an advisor coach to more celebrity and agent speakers on stages around the circuit for good reason. Not only is he the founder of the Total Success Summit, Titans of Real Estate, and Be Phenomenal Australia, but also founder of Agent Prospecting, the largest outsourced prospecting, top of mind awareness branding, and lead generation service exclusively for real estate agents in the Southern Hemisphere.
God, I promise you, Nick, I didn't write that bio. I mean, it's sort of true, but I was wondering who wrote that. And
I know you hand wrote it to someone else to type. I get it.
One of my team must have written that one, but I mean, it's true. But I would have flowered it up a bit.
I thought Grok would have knocked that out for you, mate.
Yeah, no. Oh, geez. But I mean, if you sum that all up, like I just wrote in my thing, and I think I'd left that from last time I used this system with you. I built a career out of being an attention whore. You know what I mean? Like my job is to get attention from people who don't want to give me attention, and it's worked for my business because there's a million people who support business people, or in my particular, I've niched it down, which is a good principle, getting a niche of the niche. So instead of just teaching every business owner, even though these principles work for a lot of businesses, I just teach real estate agents primarily. And I teach them to do the same thing, to stand out in this sea of sameness. And, all the real, the viewers here would know what they think of real estate agents, the fact that they're everywhere, they're dime a dozen and all of that. So how do I get one of them in every area to shine so that they get called in disproportionate amount of times? And so if it works for my business to them and their business to their clients, I reckon we can reverse engineer some of these principles and help some musos and some artists and that sort of thing.
That's what I'm hoping. I really appreciate your time on this, because I know this is your business. This is what people pay you to do and talk about. And the fact that, I've come to you and said, mate, well, what you do is you do so well. I'm trying to put a little thing out here where we can maybe help musos develop what they're doing. And were you willing to have a couple of chats? And honestly, folks, in case you're interested, or you should be interested, early in the new year, we're going to try and get Glenn over here to Queensland to do a little workshop with us and talk about things in a lot more depth. But today, mate, we're sole traders is what we are. We're small businesses as musicians. I'll leave the floor to you, but where do we, when we start looking at how we better brand ourselves, how we market ourselves, how we take on those challenges that you talk to real estate agents about, what are the opening steps for us to look at?
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of things to do, and what I sort of grabbed is I've just got them on the screen above me that I'll and I might share the screen if there's something that needs a visual look or whatever. But I've sort of got the slides and the PowerPoints to remind me to take you through the principles of what I call celebrity positioning. Meaning, if you look at, it's basically how to make someone famous within a niche. But if you think about any industry, you name the industry, there'll be a person in it who is the famous version of whatever that is. Mm-hmm. So there's sort of like a pyramid that I've got. And it's sort of like if you start out in any industry, there's a whole bunch of generalists, right? So name the industry. There's a whole bunch of people that would be a general practitioner of that business, whether it's in sport or whether, really it's in music as well, or, any field of endeavor. So, for example, in the medical industry, a general practitioner, if you're sick and you need someone else, you've got a sniffle, and your doctor's away for 3 weeks, what do? You go to another one. Yeah, you go to another one. So they're interchangeable. Whereas the next sort of rung up that ladder is the specialist. And you think about it, if you've got nodules on your voice, where do you go? You go to the specialist. And if he's away for 2 weeks, what do you do if your specialist is away?
You have to wait.
You wait 2 weeks, right? Yeah. And you pay more for that specialist Because I remember once I went to an ENT doctor because I had a sore throat, and it was kind of when I was, pretending to be a wannabe Nick Phillips. And I was doing a lot of gigs, and I was well booked, not because I'm anywhere near Nick's talent, but because I can talk a lot between songs and have some fun with the audience. And, it was more about entertainment factor and playing K-San 3 times a row because you got Cold Chisel fans in the bloody room. You got to play it every set because one will be there early and one will be there halfway through and one will be there late. So you got to do 3 K-Sans and 4 Brown-Eyed Girls and 2 Copperhead Roads. But that was my unique selling proposition, I guess. So I went to the specialist to have a look at the throat to see if, heaven forbid, because you hear about Mark Hunter dying from bloody that, and so it was minutes. He sprays a little spray down. He puts a little camera, has a little look, comes out. It was minutes and a bill for $550. So the specialist is paid more for less time, and it's less. Everything about the specialist business is easier. But the top of the hierarchy will stay in the medical field. How much is an hour with Dr. Phil? Yeah. Now, I don't know. But let's say, given the celebrities that I've hired before, it's a multiple of 6 figures if you wanted to hire Dr. Phil for an appointment. So, and here's the point, I suppose. Does Dr. Phil necessarily know more about the workings of human interactions, or, does he know more about being a psychologist than a well-trained, university-graduated psychologist? Not necessarily. So why would Dr. Phil be worth $100,000 when you could go to a really good psychologist for $500 as a specialist? Well, he's famous. That's it. He's the famous version of what it is we do. And the same thing is true in every industry. A personal trainer is $80 an hour. And you get there and you go do your session with a personal trainer, $80 an hour. A specialist, I remember my partner, Naomi, she is vegan and physically, put together and in, sort of working out. And so she was paying in LA $1,000 for a 12-week program. She never even had to meet the personal trainer, and because he's in LA. So just for advice only, $1,000 per 12-week program to be in this group and get a message here and there. And, easy job for this because he specialized in being a vegan bodybuilding coach.
So was it fair to say the value is in the perception?
Absolutely. Well, the value is in whether it's called perception or whether it's just called positioning yourself as either a specialist if you can do it, or the top of that ladder. Because think about this. I hired Michelle Bridges for an hour and a half.
Yep.
So whilst I'm, it was in the deal not to say how much it is, it was a multiple 5-figure sum to hire Michelle Bridges for an hour and a half. Why is Michelle Bridges worth that? Multiples north of $10,000 and a normal PT. Does Michelle Bridges know anything more than the other 2 levels? Not necessarily. Why is she worth so much? Because people know her name. She's the famous version of a personal trainer. Scotty Can, he's the carpenter guy on the block. You can bet your butt if you want a bloody pergola put together by Scotty Can, it's going to cost you more than your local chippy. And every industry's got that. So it's kind of like, okay, what makes Michelle Bridges, Scotty Can, the good-looking vet, doctor, whatever his name is, the one that all the girls love. What's that guy's name? I can't think of his name. But anyway, that good-looking. Normally, if I'm in a seminar and I say, what's the vet? The girls all yell out his name because they all love him. Yeah. But you can bet a vasectomy from Dr. Dreamy Boat will be more than your local vet. So what is it? And so I broke it down into about 6 things that we can all do, because I ended up making myself famous to my niche. And I'm somewhere in between specialist and celebrity specialist. I'm somewhere in between that. I'm not quite at the, megastar, famous, get stopped in the street level. But at an industry event, I kind of am, if I'm at an industry event. So what your guys can do is at a local level do the same sort of thing. and we can go through sort of those principles and see if we can reverse engineer the sort of the 6 things that all these famous people have in common.
Awesome.
And try and see what we can pull out, the practical things that we can do to sort of position ourselves. And that's the key word. It's positioning yourself as famous. Because here's the problem I've got with business people, with myself, and the musos have got, or the artists, is that we can't wait for someone else to come along and anoint us and say, Nick, I hereby anoint you the next Keith Urban. Because then you're waiting for someone else to anoint you. So we've got to...
And you're playing the craps as well. I mean, let's take it. Michelle Bridges, she got on the right show. She got the right thing open up for her. There's probably a line of physical trainers behind her who are just as good, who didn't get that opportunity. So how do you move yourself forward if you don't get that opportunity?
It's exactly right. So...
I've got my pad out here to take notes too, mate. So I'm studying.
Well, the first thing I teach, because again, the beauty of what we've got at a local level, because most of us as artists, we want our work to be plied at a local level. Like we don't have to get, our local musician. You know what? In our industry, certainly in our town, and I know people all over the country would be listening to this, Nick, because I've seen some of the guests you've had after me, and I'm like, what the hell did Nick have me on this for when he's got bloody Jamie Dunn and the owner of Toombul Music, Bob, no, is it Bill? No, Bob. What's the owner of Toombul Music?
Barry Bull.
Barry Bull. Yeah, I bought his book. A Little Bull Goes a Long Way back in the day. Yeah, wonderful guests you've got. So, but the celebrity specialist in our area, think about this. The generalists are the dime a dozen musos, all who want a gig, right?
Yep.
The specialist would be a Nick Phillips, right? Gets paid a little bit more than the standard muso would get. Specializes singer-songwriter, Aussie kind of, storyteller, bard kind of, that sort of specializing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about Tuffy would be somewhere up towards the celebrity specialist side because he built that following, he built that branding and positioning. Now, is Tuffy necessarily as good a muso as anyone else kind of thing? Well, he's not necessarily the greatest muso, but he's a great entertainer and he got well known by doing some of the things that we're going to talk about. And yet some of the pricing that back in the day Tuffy could command was far in excess what I could, Yeah. And I was just in the muso world, I was just starting to hint at that specialist category. Not that I got paid extra, but I got booked a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And my specialty was just being the most fun that you'd have at the pub. Like if you're at a gig of mine, I'm going to have more fun than everyone else there, but the audience is going to have some fun because I'm having a great old time.
Yep. And if it makes people stay and you sell alcohol, that's what they want to see.
It's exactly right. Yeah, you don't have to be Joe Satriani on the guitar or Celine Dion with the vocals if they're drinking the booze and they report back to the publican. And we talked about this last time.
Yeah.
When they say thanks, mate, and they thanking you or whatever, and you just drop in the note. Oh, make sure you let them know at the bar there, so they let me come back. It's almost like you're aligning with them to conspire. You and the punter, you and the guest audience member, you're conspiring to get the bar to bring you back because we all had such a good time. So it works like this in every industry. And look, the first thing I teach real estate agents to do, because like a local muso who wants to get well known in Brisbane, because that's what Tuffy did. I tell you, there would be cities in Australia that Tuffy wouldn't mean anything. But in Brisbane, if you're my vintage, if you're your vintage, Tuffy's a household name because he was part of your growing up.
Yep.
If you went out in the music scene, and so we don't have to get famous to the whole world, and that's the key. We only have to get famous to a very small geographic area. For a real estate agent, it's only a couple of suburbs. For a muso, it's probably level. Well, we start with that, but what we want to get to is the famous level, where at the very least, it's almost like we're faking it till we make it, but in doing the faking it, we're forcing other people to perceive us as having already made it because we're not waiting for someone else to anoint us. And so essentially, like, think about this. One of the things that celebrity specialists all have in common is they are interviewed by the media en masse, right? They are a media commentator. Radio, TV, newspaper, and magazines go to them for their commentary on things. And so in today's world, what can we do to emulate that before it's a reality? So, for example, one of the things that I did, and I will, I'll make sure that as I say these things, I'll note them down so I can send you some visuals for you to add in. So let me just scribble in the paper article. Okay, so one of the things I did is I wrote an article about how freaking great I am, basically, right? And so it was old school classic rock still brings them in or something. And I wrote it and I set it out, as you'll see with the example that I give you. It was a newspaper paper, and I had this article printed on newspaper paper. It looked, for all intents and purposes, like a newspaper. And up the top, I had Hospitality News. That was the publication. There is no such thing as Hospitality News. Hospitality News. And then the article said all the things I would have wanted a reporter to say about me, right? And interviewing, you know, it's classic, it's great, it's and there'll be quotes from me saying, well, it's not just about getting up there and being Joe Satriani, it's about having a mix of music where there's a couple of dance numbers, but then a slower number that, you know, the crowd can sometimes even be a bit upset with it because it's a bit slower, but it forces them, while they're listening to Pink Floyd, to go use that opportunity to go and spend some money at the bar. So the bar, because if you just have them dancing all night, the muso doesn't get booked again. You know, you've got to rotate these things so they can go to the bar and they can socialize and do all of those things. So it had this article all about that. And it looked and read like a journalist would write it, with quotes from me and everything. And then at the end, it says there's a little box call to action with a, you know, to inquire about Homer's availability, SMS. And I had Louis' number from Rock Art Entertainment. I had my agent's number there. And so, and I sent that to every venue in Southeast Queensland. Right. So they thought, now here's the thing about that. I didn't send it from me and saying, hey, I'm Homer, I'm bloody great. And look at me. What I did was I had it printed out on this newspaper paper and then I tore it in the middle because I had the same thing printed. So it looked like it had been ripped out of this Hospitality News. Then I put a little Post-it note on it. And it was something like this, but, you know, the normal size. And I wrote on the Post-it note in this pen, because this pen, when you print onto Post-it note paper, this pen here, this Artline 2.0, is indecipherable that if you sort of write it with that, the printing of that by a printer looks identical, right? Now, otherwise, just write it yourself 100 times or however many you're going to send out. But I was sending out so many, I got some Post-it notes printed with the same thing, and it said, hey, can we get this guy in? As if one of their now I didn't say that I was one of their punters, but of course the assumption is that someone ripped this out of Hospitality News, put a Post-it note on it saying, hey, can we get this guy in? And then sent it to the venue managers at each place. Faking, because the assumption is that one of their friends or one of their board members or one of their patrons sent that into them. They read it and then they actually consider, oh, okay, maybe, whatever, right? As opposed to if you just drop the flyer to every decision, you know as well as I do, it is hard to get their attention because there are so many musos. It's exactly right. So the thinking there is, we would love that if that actually happened from one of their patrons or one of their board members or whatever the case may be. Yeah. But you can't wait for the world to do it. You've got to take matters into your own hands. Do it yourself and set it up where you're not being deceptive, even though you know that they are going to fill in the blanks in their own head and accept it in a way that isn't actually true yet. But, and so like my first seminar, I did that where I wrote an article on how wonderful this event that I was going to do was going to be. And then the Post-it note on it that says, and by the way, the backside was still, more articles and stuff. It needs to look front and back like it's genuine. Yeah. And then my Post-it note for the event said, here's that event I mentioned. We just got tickets. You got to come. Smiley face with a circle around it. Right now, think about this. They think that a friend of theirs or a colleague of theirs or something sent them this article about this amazing event that's coming up. But I didn't even lie on the post-it note, because here's that event I mentioned. Well, I've been emailing it out to every real estate agent in the country or whatever. So yes, I mentioned it. We just got tickets. Well, it's my event. I got a whole lot of tickets. You got to come. So every word's true, even though now I'm not here to say whether this sort of almost being a bit deceptive is right or wrong, but I'm saying this is a way that I've now been in the mind of the recipient. I've been a featured artist in a industry magazine about what it is that I do. So not only does it position me as worthy of them writing and being in the media, but it also gets this article, this ad, because it's nothing more than a sales letter, read at a disproportionate rate that if I just sent a sales letter out, or if I just sent a brochure or something out, or a demo.
You're setting up the perception.
Yeah. So, and we do that in a lot of different ways. And basically we think to ourselves, and this is how I came up with the ones for real estate agents, right? What is it that every celebrity specialist in any industry has got that the generalists and even the specialists don't have? And then one of them was being mentioned in the media. So we reverse engineer it and we figure out, right, how can we fake that when we don't have the media calling us? Well, the answer is we make our own media, called hospitality news, or I just got to turn this off. Sorry, brother. Fuck.
Do whatever you need. I can add stuff out.
Cool. So that's, I suppose, and I'll sit on that so it doesn't annoy us again. I don't know how to turn off the ringer.
You just like the vibration.
Yeah, like the vibrate under. But so that's what we do, man. We reverse engineer. So we think to ourselves, and that's what I did with business owners, So one of the other things we did. Oh,
sorry to interrupt you just for a second. An extension of that, I'll just toss in there tell me if this is a stupid idea or a good idea. But I guess if have some friends too who actually go to the East Rugby Leagues Club or the South Club or whatever else, you could actually hand them the envelope and get them to pass it on to their the reception as if literally they were giving it to you, even though you've given it to them.
Yeah, it's a good call. And man, at this stage, we're just brainstorming because we're taking principles that work, and now the strategies and the tactics within those principles. That's what we got to brainstorm. So that's certainly no silly ideas. It's just a case of, righto, how can this work? That's a great way to get that maybe received. But the challenge with that is having one person in each of, say, there's 70 venues.
That would be a limited amount of numbers. But if you do know friends who are
certainly valid. Yeah.
Members of clubs and a lot of people, are members of RSL clubs or whatever else who and I'll often say, I'll be playing at a gig and people say to me, oh, have you ever played at, Corinda or wherever else? Because that's where we often go to and actually have something like that and say, well, maybe hand this envelope over.
Put in a word for me. Yeah. No, valid. And so, but again, thinking about that, what other media could be faked? Like now in today's world, I tell you, one of the best things an artist could do is be featured on this podcast and others like it. Because now what are famous people? Famous people are often on podcasts. So getting and even begging for a podcast position, and of course, the more prominent the podcast, the more legit. Like if you can get somehow on Rogan's podcast, that's the pinnacle of podcast fame, right? And anyone in that echelon. But until Rogan's inviting, then you get on whatever podcast you can get on, especially when they're well produced and all of that. And so that's what I actually did. I actually ended up at my my studios, and once again, I'll show you the podcast photos. I got a table made with mics like you've got there, and green screen behind. You'll see on the photos there, the whole back area is green. And that means I can put me and my guest in whatever setting I want. And in the hands of even a half decent video editor, which I've got, with a 3-camera shoot, one pointing tight in on us each, so one on each of the guests, and one 2-shot that has us both. If your video editor has got that and behind you is all green, they can put you on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise if they want and have you looking like you are a total pro. And with relatively, home usable green screens that'll cost you $20 on AliExpress or Temu or something, or even go to Spot. What I did early, go to Spotlight and get a big thread of solid green curtain material and just tack it up on the wall behind you.
Yeah, that's where my highly expensive background came from, mate.
Yeah. Oh, you'll notice mine's empty. I'm in the middle of moving house, and I thought, geez, that looks sparse. So I littered it with a Trump statue and Queen and some Make America Great Again hats and things. Yes, but yeah. So no, I as my tribute to Charlie Kirk, I know where. And when you said earlier in the intro, Nick, that you were happy day because you're happy to be chatting with me. Well, mate, over the last few days we've had, we could do with a happy day, mate. May Charlie's soul rest in peace.
And whatever your politics are on that note, just someone who encourages debate and discussions, whether you agree with them or not, is yeah. I think Glenn and I agree that that's not, you don't celebrate someone like that,
dude. No, I mean, not only don't celebrate it, but don't see the one bloke on the other side of the coin that's the one who wants to talk to you. Yeah. Now they're stuck with Milo. Good luck. Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? I'm just, but anyway.
Well, mate, coming up in the future, I'll let people know Glenn and I do have some similar thoughts on those things, and we're going to be chatting to some political people in the future, but that's for another session. We'll get back to making us all superstars, mate.
Yeah. So, well, as you can see with that podcast kind of studio, that's all just about faking it till I make it, right? Now, that leads me to another one of the principles, okay? So when we think about what famous people do, famous people hang out with other famous people, right? That's one of the things they have in common. You go to Kevin Hart's Instagram, you'll see The Rock on every third thread, or you'll see Kevin doing a live stream and you'll see Dwayne in the chat messing with him, right? So
or Nick hanging out with Glenn Twiddle, yeah.
Don't know, well, mate, we're the wannabes, brother. but I tell you what, I'll give you a nice a thing to scroll through, like just a big whack of them. Mm-hmm. The principle is this: every time you meet a famous person, no, this isn't the principle. The principle is famous people hang out with each other, right? So the strategy is, how do we fake that when we aren't hanging out with famous people every day? Well, the tactic is find ways to get photographed with famous people, however that happens to be. Now, I might be a bit of a tragic that started off doing this as a hobby when I was like 20 years old, and I got a plectrum from Red Simons from Skyhooks on the Jukebox in Siberia tour, and then I got to say thanks to him after the show. And then I was addicted to saying g'day, getting a plectrum, getting an autograph. And so for years, I would find ways to meet Billy Joel like 4 times, Bryan Adams, John Bon Jovi, Alice Cooper, Roger Daltrey, Keith Urban at the Guitar Center over in LA, and I would get photos with my favorite musos and actors or whatever. And then I started to do the same thing in my professional capacity, which culminated in what we talked about last time, the paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to run an event where Arnold Schwarzenegger is my headline speaker or Richard Branson is my headline speaker. So I'm getting the power of association, I call it, right? So that on your social media thread, because here's the way you're going to influence your people throughout the media at a much more affordable way than you could ever do before. And that's via social media, right? So depending on your target demo, so if your target market is like me and Nick, and it's sort of the 35 and up crowd who still like Copperhead Road, K-San, Jimmy Barnes, blah, 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 Facebook is your platform because that's where us oldies hang out. Now, if you're more current and modern and that, you want to go playing on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, and maybe Snapchat. Those are the platforms that skew younger. But you go to whatever your platform is and you distribute using their paid advertising platform, because the beauty of all this stuff is, Nick, back in our day, if you were wanting to run a mail out to your database, because one of the things we talked about last time is build a list, build a database of your fans so that you can market direct to them, right? So if you do put out an album during COVID, Shannon Knoll put out an album to keep the revenue going or whatever. He went direct to consumers. It was called Raw because it was filmed raw or whatever, sold a whole bunch and, made some dough, because if he sold them through the record company, you get like whatever it is, $1 or something out of every 20 or 30 bucks. Yeah. When Shannon Knoll says it, sells a CD direct to consumers, or when we sold our Hardways CDs direct to consumers, we sell them for $20. The CD and the disc and the printing cost like $2. It's like 90% profit margin, not 10. So you can afford to sell 1/10 of the volume. Well, look at there's a guy right now that is fulfilling this to the T. His name's Tom McDonald. You ever seen him?
No.
So put him in your YouTube and Google and have a look at the volume of views that he gets on his stuff on the Spotifys and the YouTubes and stuff. His merch sales are out of this world. And I think it's still him and his mother-in-law and his family and that wrap up all this merch and ship it all from themselves. That means maximizing profit on merch by going direct to the consumers rather than getting a tiny royalty, waiting for someone else to anoint you with a record deal. You know, and that's one of the beauty of building a list of your own.
Hey, quick commercial break. Big shout out to our sponsor for today's episode, which is me, Nick Phillips. Look, I've got to thank myself so much. I couldn't be doing the show without me. And if you get a chance, check out the sponsor's website, www.nickphillips.com. Check out my music, my videos, my bio, all that stuff, and maybe contact me and book me for a gig. That would be great. But thanks, Nick, for your sponsorship. Back to the show.
So let's go back. We were talking about this. When Nick used to do this back in the day, wonderful strategy, giving away a guitar in exchange for your mailing address. But think about that. In today's world, if you were going to duplicate that strategy, it's $1.50 per bloody invite to get to the gig. Boy, oh boy, you better have a lot of them turn up to make the numbers on that work. So it's $1.50 for an eyeball, essentially, because you've got to mail to a mailing list. Whereas on social media, it's 1 to 2 cents for an eyeball or an ear, you know. And so we're going to use social media to deploy to our fans and to our audience. But the problem is with the social media pages and the platforms and things, there's no such thing as free anymore. Sure, you can use your personal profile to get some free to the people who are actually your friends. But if you want to get new fans, you have to go to a page and use the paid advertising platform to get some listens. And so if you sort of put that into your budget, that when you're budgeting a gig, for example, and you get a nice demo put together that either showcases you in your best light. Now, if that's covers, fair enough. If that's originals, fair enough. And you put together your best demo reel, 30 seconds of your best chorus and, interlace it with some footage of people having fun at your gig, and you get a nice video editor, put it all together. And then you just shove that down the throats of your target demographic geographically, your target age group, and maybe even say you're like, we were like a combination of Aerosmith, Bon Jovi, Garth Brooks, because we had a bit of a country flang to us. That was our sort of demo. So we would advertise our gigs to people in this geographic area and this age demographic and who are interested in Bon Jovi, Aerosmith, Garth Brooks, or whatever. So we're targeting the right people, the right age, and it's costing us 1 to 2 cents per ear. So imagine if you've got a gig coming up and you get your $300 or $400 maybe for the gig to perform. Ask the venue for an extra $100 or $50 or something, and shove that on your Facebook page, paid advertising, shoved to your local area, because $100 is going to get you about 5 to 10,000 eyeballs are going to see it. Now, what if that only results in 5 or 10 people coming to the gig that weren't gonna? That's still pretty good, because at a $50 a head booze spend, that publican is going to be okay with giving you that extra $100. And then you build that audience and you build and you build. But there's no substitute for that. Go ahead.
I've had musicians say to me, they hate the fact they've got to put ads on Facebook and that, because the venue should be marketing and all that. It's never changed. As you say, going back to the 80s, 90s, when we do our mailing lists and we'd actually buy the stamps and put them on, we did our own marketing. The venues are there to market themselves. Now, hopefully, as they're marketing themselves, they market you, but to maximize your profile and build your place going up the ladder, you're going to have to pay something. I did a chat a while ago with Johnny Blunt, and he was saying by far their biggest expense at the moment is what they spend on Facebook ads.
Yep. But rightly so. I mean, I've seen Killer Queen, that show, live. I've seen Johnny do it. They're an amazing band. Their Brian May guy's just a killer. And I tell you, I've seen rooms of. I remember one of the gigs I did was so full, it was more bodies than the Radiators when we went and played and supported them. So how can a tribute band of musicians that aren't Queen fill up a venue more than the Radiators? It's because they've got an audience that want to see them do it, and they've got the ability to put that in front of the audience. Because I tell you, you've got to bring bodies. The venues aren't going to make you famous. That's waiting for someone else to anoint you. But once you self-promote and put the effort in like Nick did, when your very presence fills up their venue, that's when you can command whatever you want. I mean, the rumors are back in the day, and I know you're friends with Tuffy, so I'm not asking you to talk out of turn about numbers, but I know Tuffy was getting 10 times what some of us were getting for our gigs when we were getting $300, $400 per gig. Why would is Tuffy 10 times better a performer than all of us?
I mean,
Not
necessarily. He wouldn't mind me saying that Normanby, when he started there, I think they were doing on their Sundays $12,000 a night, and he built that place to be taking over on a Sunday over $150,000 a night. So that's justifying your
whatever he charges.
But mate, I do want people to appreciate too. I think as far as that Facebook grassroots advertising, that's just given that everyone's got to be doing that. That's the baseline. What they need to be appreciating what you're saying now, and what every local musician should listen to this chat, is you're saying, okay, if that's the base level, what are the other ideas you can do that get you above the crowd from that base level? And
but on that, Nick, I mean, are you sure everyone's doing it? Because I have
Everyone should be doing. Everyone should be doing it.
I've never seen one once, Nick. And
that
I travel the country.
Yeah, that should be our baseline position. If you're not doing that, if you're not doing those basic social media ads yourself, well, then you're not serious about your game.
Well, but here's what I would say, Nick, is if, like I suspect, certainly in Perth, but no, man, I spend a lot of time still in Southeast Queensland in Ipswich, and that's where I used to live. So I used to do a lot of gigs from that, as set Toowoomba, Dalby. I'd go out west, I'd go into the city, I'd go to Sunshine Coast, Gold Coast, whatever. I still spend a lot of time in Southeast Queensland. I've never yet seen one muso. Never once have I seen come and see me at the local Normanby Hotel or the local Ipswich gig or whatever. So what I would say is...
I started doing it. Like I chat to a guy called Bam just recently, and Bam's really good at his social media, and he's working like lots. So the ones who are doing it are working more than the ones who don't. So that's the baseline. And there are people
your audience... Go ahead. Sorry, Nick.
The people are doing it are getting benefits, but that's not what will make you successful. To me, that's the baseline. If you're not...
What I would say, Nick, is whatever your competitors aren't doing, do that, right? So if you're an Ipswich muso, for example, look, here's the take home. Here's one of the things to do. Start to be aware of what ads are appearing on your Facebook timeline in your local area. And if you aren't seeing a muso in advance of the weekend's gigs ever, then you know that all you've got to do is do something, and you're going to be positioned as the most prominently positioned muso in your local town. And if someone's sitting around wondering what to do on a Friday night, they go, oh, what's that guy? You always see that Copperhead Road ad or whatever. They start to think, and you're shoving yourself down their throats. Instead of waiting for your pure talent to come along and lift you up, you're forcing that talent down their throats. Now, this is saying, you got to be half good in that demo. Otherwise, they're going to go, Jesus Christ. Sure. You've got to showcase what it is you're best at.
Yeah, you have to be good. Yeah.
But then given that you're good, because all the generalists are good, and you're the one they see all the time at 1 cent per eyeball. And if you can factor it into the gig, as in if you normally are happy to play for 300 and you can get 350 or 400, here's what's going to start happening. The venues are going to start seeing your ads. The managers are going to start seeing your ads. And when they do and they talk to you, they're not going to be surprised when you have on your invoice that for the performance, that for the advertising. And if they balk at it, you say, well, you've seen my ads, haven't you? Once you've been doing this for a while, they will have seen you because you've got to put in a budget. Imagine if you've got 3 gigs and they've each got $100 budget for the weekend. $300 run for sort of 5 days is going to get you saturating your geographic marketplace. Everyone will see you because $300 is going to get you at 2 cents an eyeball, so $300 is about 15 to 30,000 impressions in the timeline of your local area. I'm telling you, that's going to be where people are going to start to see you. And you're not even paying the money. Like, it's just a advertising expense you're chucking on top of your gig fee, and it gets easier the more you do it because the venues will start to see the results.
Brother, I love talking to you because my wheels keep rolling when I talk to you. And I think just what you're saying there, it's sparked up something I haven't done, but I will start implementing, is even working through the agents I work through, or whether I'm talking to a venue myself, start putting in an additive saying, yeah, okay, well, there's a fee. But I notice your guys' social media, it's kind of very generic. There's sort of not a real lot of stuff happening. I've been getting, when I work with Tuffy, we've been getting 7, 8, 9,000 interactions through the marketing we do, and we only spend this. And if you'd like to add, $50 onto that fee of mine, I will put an ad in place that promotes your venue and me, and I will show you that it's getting more traction than your venue's getting. And it would make sense to a venue then to say, well, we don't, because most venues don't really know what they're doing with their social media marketing.
That's right. And you can bet your butt most of them aren't paying. A lot of those businesses, they have the 18-year-old on reception who they think knows social media, chuck something up on their page. They're not shoving any money at it. So it's just sitting there organically doing nothing. But then when you see what they're doing, when they see what you're doing, and you can show the interactions and the comments and the likes and you can even see the behind the scenes analytics, you can show them that you're able to do something that their team aren't able to do. Just one thing though, make sure they don't sort of say, oh yeah, we'll chuck it on our social media. And no, it needs to be run through your page. That way it's your page that's getting that overall promotion, thus making the page more and more valuable the longer you do this.
Lifting your perception.
Yeah. And imagine when you've got a page that on someone else's dime, meaning the venue's dime, and you've got a page with 30,000 likes on Facebook or 40,000 followers on Instagram or whatever the case may be. Now, all of a sudden, you're starting to say to the venue, if they see your Facebook page or your Instagram page with 40,000 followers, they're starting to go, who's this? Bloody hell. That's better than that dickhead who's got 18 followers and they're his mum, his brother-in-law, and his agent. Or what, you know what I mean? So you're starting, and that's one of the other things that a celebrity specialist has in common. They've all got a social media following.
So it's a bit of a mind shift to say, okay, while we all want to put ads on Facebook or Instagram, whatever, and we want those results to come, you're actually using the traffic you get to see your ads as an added benefit to improve your positioning with the venue.
Yeah, well, one of the things also, in every way, yes, because it all sort of links in together. And that's why, like, even at the moment, I've been called on to some very prominent podcasts in my industry around the world, including, in the UK, in America. Yeah. And it's all because the thing that started out as a marketing strategy ends up becoming the reality. It starts out as a tactic, but it ends up being true because so many people see the strategy. They start to, it's almost like they judge you at your own appraisal. Like you're putting yourself out there as this person that is further along. My book is called Punching Above Your Weight because I do all these things to be perceived as at a higher level of prominence in my industry than I actually am. But in doing so, I became that level of prominence in my industry.
And what I love about this chat is that in our last chat, we talked about some of the things you do, and it was about getting your mindset right to do marketing and being willing to take the risk. And when you hear the story of, getting backing yourself to hundreds and thousands of dollars that you really didn't have to get Arnold Schwarzenegger out here, it's like most artists can't dream of doing that type of thing. But what you're providing here is a very practical solution to how you can do it from the grassroots. I'm just loving it, mate. Thank you.
But one thing leads to another, man. Because my first couple of events, when I did this in the speaking seminar space, were just speakers that I would beg to come and speak for free. That was it. But then I paid John McGrath, who was an Australian celebrity specialist in the real estate space. He was the first person I paid money for, and it was only a multiple of $10,000. It was a 5-figure sum, and a low 5-figure sum, not a 6-figure sum. And that was the most money I'd ever paid for a speaker. So I was crapping myself then. But it was just a case of putting everything back in. And when that one worked out, then the next one, and I could afford the next level of speaker. So in a music sense, and I know we talked about this, how do you get to play at Boondle Entertainment Centre to 20,000 people when you're not Alice Cooper or you're not Bryan Adams or whatever the case may be? Well, the example I used was hire Bryan Adams and you be his support thing, Well, the early stages of that would be hire find out a local venue, negotiate with the venue, find out how to hire a one step above you muso, and in my case back then, that would be Nick Phillips. Hire Nick Phillips, and that way I get to play before the person who's already got an audience. And if I'm half good, some of that audience might like me a tiny little bit. And if I can break even on the numbers on that, by figuring out the ticket price or the venue or whatever it might be, so that I can be the support for the person who is one or two above me, then that's going to be the first step. And then eventually I might even start getting seen as, if I do a good job, I might start building my own audience. And then I might be able to return the favor by, if I start getting something, then maybe me and Nick might be seen as equal in some people's minds. So now I introduce my people to Nick and so on and so forth. And then we keep going like that. And, and that's exactly kind of what I did, is I figured out and I just went up in levels. So you don't have to get to the end game. You can start where you can start, with whoever you can start. We talked last time about, even getting little conglomerates together of equally, everyone's got 10 people in their fan base who will come to everything. If you get 10 of those bands together, you've already got an audience of 100 people. It's a good start.
Yeah. That's 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So look, there's a few more things. That's a good start. Is get your social presence.
We don't need to
give it all.
Right? So you take it to where you want to go. As I said, one of the things we are going to do with Glenn, I'm going to talk to him regularly, and we do want to get him over here to do a full-on seminar in the new year. And along with Glenn, other people in the industry that a lot of musos may not have had access to. Like the problem with a lot of the music events that happen, they get the same old thinking, and it's normal modeling around thinking about how the industry worked or has worked, and the game's changing. And I'm really keen to get people like Glenn who are out there in the real world working with real estate agents who have to do the same thing we do as musicians, which is build their profile, get connections to people, and turn that exposure into income. We need to do that by thinking outside of the box these days. And one of the things I'm trying to do with Glenn is get to that point where we listen to people who are not just out of the music world. Even though he is out of the music world, he has these other skills that we can bring into our world and start implementing in the new environment that we live in.
Well, the one thing, I'll just leave you guys with some homework, right? So let me just share my screen. Now, have I got? Oh God, it's bringing up every tab. I don't want that. I'll just go the entire screen and hope that works.
I'm not the Pornhub, mate. Not that one.
Let me just go to that, and I'll bring this down and bring up I had Spotify open. Okay, so can you see my Spotify?
Yes, can do.
Yeah. Okay. So get yourself a graphic designer. Get a good photo shoot. It doesn't need to be a big professional photo shoot, but get some semblance of a photo shoot and a half decent but cheap overseas graphic designer, so you can get some graphics made like that. Maybe for you, this is maybe your Spotify. So this is the Hardways. This is a band that I screwed around with that we talked about last time. So go to the Hardways, have a little look. And by the way,
just for people who don't know, the opening for this album is done by George Carlin, the great comedian who Glenn reached out to and got to do that whole intro for him. So go on to Spotify and check out the Hardways, guys. For the music, but also the fact that he got George Carlin to do the introduction. That's like,
that's
screw Schwarzenegger, mate. You got George Carlin.
And think about this, this intro by the Hardways, but George Carlin is there. Well, it's just an instrumental track. How the hell is it one of our most listened to songs? It's because of the George Carlin kind of influence. And then we put George on the cover, Yeah. So get yourself a graphic designer so that you can start to get your stuff looking like it's worthy, right? And, so that you've got singles cover, you've got album cover, you've got, like This Is Us back in the day, 100 million years ago. And then start to, and I suppose let me just get my thing so I can see Nick back. There it is. Yep, beautiful. So you start to get, because one of the other things that famous musos have all got, and I know you might think it's premature, but don't worry about it. Just tell your bandmates, or if it's just you, just discipline yourself that you're going to put a few bob away and you're going to get some merch made so that at the gig you can sell some. Like, I remember I used to buy every CD that Nick Phillips had, and as soon as he had a new one, I would get the new release. So, and Nick wasn't at the stage that he should have been as far as his talent is concerned, at least in my opinion. You know, in my opinion, we should be seeing Nick on the thing, not Keith Urban. Because, look, my style was Nick Phillips. I loved it, you know, so, but Nick had albums. Nick had merch. I don't think he ever had, well, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, I never got a Nick Phillips T-shirt.
Well, what I didn't do it around me, but we ended up I played at Her Majesty's for a long time, and I created a thing through my marketing base called the Mobile Party Unit, and we did create merch, T-shirt merch for the Mobile Party Unit, and that was sort of something that everyone bought because they were part of the club. We do bus trips to Nambour and Noosa and all that stuff with the Mobile Party Unit, which was the regulars at Her Majesty's. You know,
so that's the equivalent. Well, that principle, I like that. That's the equivalent of calling your audience something. So I wasn't going to go down that path, but you think about the Kiss Army. They've got an identity that they all subscribe to. And what the Kiss Army do, they turn up before the gig and socialize with each other. They then have the gig. Then on the way home, they are listening to Kiss songs on the way home. And it truly is an identity that someone forms. So I didn't know that about the Mobile Party Unit.
I mean, that's something I will be trying to do with this little channel. I mean, obviously I'm driving. It's my little thing. It's just I love talking to people. I love getting our local stories out. But my goal is to have a pile of local artists who can't get involved. And, you know, end of the day, create, you know, Aussie Live and local shirts with each different bands on them or something and have stuff like that. You know, I think that would be something I'd love to do down the track. And, but you got to do the baby steps first, which is what we're doing. But,
well, and I reckon your humility, Nick, might have been working against you in that way. And well, I think it would have been. Also,
it's not some. Well, no, it's some humility and not being brave enough. But you know, I have a limited number of photos of me being with famous people. Like I've got some of me and Andy Summers from the Police on the Great Wall in China and all that stuff. But I work with so many great artists, like from the Barnsies through the Dragons to the Pseudo Echoes, whatever. And I was always too like, I can't go and ask them for a photo. You know, I'm kind of like another muse. I can't do that. And I miss so many opportunities, which I wish I had now because I could definitely be using those now. You were brave and actually just say, well, screw that. I'm just going to go and ask them to talk. Yeah, that's great.
And it's because I honed the skills and the bravery to do it as a fanboy.
Yep.
And so then once it was for a professional, I trained my head to just always get, whether it's the selfie, but I tell you, towards the latter of my career, and just have someone. And so this is what I advised Nick in that particular case, although I was going somewhere else, but stay on this for a moment. Have someone assigned and trained that is with you whenever you are with famous people, even if that's your missus or whatever, to be on the lookout for those moments. So when you're having a moment and you're talking with, with Jamie Dunn or with whoever it is that's famous and you're talking to them, have the missus take a shot over the shoulder so they can still see that it's you, but they're getting a shot of you interacting, because that's even better than a posed arm around shot. Because, that's capturing those moments. And, because, of course, I would train up my photographers to follow me around, videographers, photographers, and just capture everything when I'm interacting with Branson, with Schwarzenegger or whatever. And then all of that B-roll becomes usable in other places in your video editing, you know? But where I was getting at, Nick, is the creating of the Kiss Army T-shirts, or, you know, in your case, the two things you mentioned were the Mobile Marketing Party Unit and the thing for this. None of them were Nick Phillips and Nick Phillips' face. And that's what I'm talking about. You can't be scared of the self-aggrandizement of you are the star and you need to act accordingly. Like the record company, if they made you Nick Phillips, the global superstar, aren't going to put up with you not putting your face on a T-shirt and selling it at the concert. You know what I mean?
Very well chastised. I understand that.
So what I'm saying to everyone though is it's not too early to get 50 T-shirts printed at $6 each and selling them for $20 and then using any and all of that profit to get the 300 t-shirts made or to get the CDs pressed or whatever. You know, we had 2,000 Hardways CDs pressed. I think it cost us $4 or $5 grand. Yep. We sold enough CDs at $20 each to pay for the whole run. Now I've got all this merch that's already paid for that I can give away. I can, you know, so it's all about building that and starting as small as you need to. You know, right. And I tell you, here's the tip of all tips. You can get such cool custom shit done on Temu and AliExpress nowadays that you no longer have the barrier to entry to get customized shit. All you need is a half decent graphic designer. And look, if you want to contact me, you can use mine because he's cheap, but he's good. And get yourself some graphics made that you can stick on a coffee mug and sell it for $10. It costs you 50 cents. You can start to have all manner of things, including t-shirts done at prices that we couldn't afford to do back in your or my day, Nick.
Yep. Makes so much sense. It's so great, mate. That's brilliant. Well, buddy, thank you very much for your time on this. It's like, as I say, I'm going to annoy you quite regularly and try and get on have our
I probably went through 3 of the principles, and I've probably got another 3 to go on this particular topic. So let's mark in the calendar volume 3 in the coming time soon, man.
If you don't mind, I would love that, mate. And I think for people to absorb where you've gone to now and see the direction we're heading to, these are really practical steps on how our local industry, despite all the struggles we go through with it, we can be doing better. And it's all about us being prepared to, walk into these areas. Look what's happening in with marketing around people like yourself. And look, guys, honestly, if you want to hear more about this, please subscribe to this channel. Please, where you see, and if you're seeing it on Facebook, follow it or whatever. And as I say, my commitment to you is I will keep harassing Glenn to in between moving houses and the multiple major things he's selling businesses and making businesses and ruling the world.
But I tell you, bro, my biggest advice, here's another homework piece for everyone. Listen to the interview that Nick did with Jamie Dunn a couple of weeks ago. I listened to it the other night, and I tell you, I was riveted. I even texted Jamie because I hired Jamie once. I was one of the ones when Jamie Dunn talks about you never not answer the phone. You chase every dollar or whatever. I was one of the dollars he chased, and believe me, I didn't pay him enough for him to chase it hard, but he walks his talk, that man. And I learned some things about you, Nick, that I did not know from that interview. That was a fantastic and fascinating interview. Highly endorsed that one.
I spoke to Steady Eddie after it, and I did an interview with Steady Eddie, the comedian, and he'd watched the Jamie one, and he said, first thing he said to me, he said, "Man, he's a mercenary." I said, mate, he was the ultimate mercenary. Jamie could make, well, he explained during that chat what happened between like him and B105 and Triple M and everything else.
He's playing them off against each other.
Played off each other, made money out of all of them when could have potentially been sued by all of them, but he covered himself that they would cover themselves for that. And,
unbelievable.
And he got criticized for stuff like that, but he was just, as an artist, man, the big guys win most of the times. Yeah. And when the smaller guy actually has the balls and the guts to stand up and back them. And the thing that Jamie, why he worked and why he could do those things was, one, his humor was so good. And I actually saw his humor being used as a weapon on many times. It was part of his artillery. But also, he was good. Aggro was probably one of the greatest TV characters that we've ever had, Yeah. And that was all Jack.
And the fact that he filled in for Vizard, that was a fascinating interview, bro. And I didn't know half of that stuff. And it really does. Because that's the thing. What Jamie did is he made something that he wasn't going to get anointed as the guy in whatever field. No one was coming. He had to make those opportunities like I'm talking about here. You can't wait to be anointed superstar because there's not enough of us that get organically where we need to get. Some of us, like that Jamie Dunn interview, have to find ways to finagle our way to prominence because no one's going to come along and do it for us.
I mean, most people don't know how to start with that stuff, but the advice you're giving is like, just guys, listen to this chat 3 or 4 times and listen to what Glenn's saying. Get your heads around it and just start implementing some of these things, because you're not talking to a guy who's speculating here. He's out there selling this in the real estate world, which has made him the #1 guy in Australia for training people in real estate for doing this stuff. So you're getting this chat for free. So make the most of it. And I'll put your links made up on the edit them in and all that stuff.
And I'd love to hear the stories, Nick. I mean, I tell you, one of the things, definitely watch that Tom McDonald. You may not like his musical style. He's a white rapper. But look at the way he markets on the platform. Amazing case study of the things I'm talking about. Incredible.
Very cool. All right, buddy. Thank you very much, mate.
No worries, man. See you next time.
Happy house moving, and catch you soon, mate.
For sure, bro.